We've got some major news to cover regarding the New York Rangers, as General Manager Chris Drury put out a statement today to the fans addressing the team entering a retool. And additionally, Elliotte Friedman dropped a major bomb that the New York Rangers are not going to re-sign Artemj Panarin. So we've got a lot to talk about, what went wrong with the New York Rangers, and what is going to go down now. Now, when we're talking about the Rangers, I think we have to go back to last season to really get a full scale on this situation. After winning the President's Trophy in 2024 and bowing out to the Florida Panthers in a hard-fought 6-game series during the playoffs, expectations were high for the Rangers last season. After a hot start, they began to fall down the standings, and we saw some pretty major deals go down, starting off with Captain Jacob Trouba being dealt to the Anaheim Ducks. And it was a pretty controversial situation as Trouba had a no-trade clause, so the Rangers basically threatened to put him on waivers, send him down to the minors, and essentially pushed him out of New York. Shortly after that, we saw the Rangers go out and trade for Vancouver Canucks forward JT Miller, and this was seen as a move that was going to try and get the Rangers back on track, and ultimately it didn't work last season. They ended up missing the playoffs. We saw them deal more players like Kaapo Kakko, Ryan Lindgren, and eventually in the offseason, fan favorite Chris Kreider to the Anaheim Ducks, as well as K-Andre Miller to the rival Carolina Hurricanes. And they followed that up by replacing head coach Peter Laviolette with longtime Penguin coach Mike Sullivan. And right before the start of the season, we saw them name JT Miller the captain of the Rangers. And the message going forward was that JT Miller was going to bring a no bullshit attitude to this team. They're going to be a scrappy team that doesn't give up, and really embody the no quit in New York line that the fans have rallied behind. This was a pretty interesting choice as captain, considering the circumstances that led to JT Miller leaving the Vancouver Canucks. This feud, or whatever was going on behind the scenes with Elias Pettersson, turned a Pacific Division winning champion that made it to Game 7 of the second round into a rebuilding team within a year. Despite this, the large sentiment around the Rangers was that they were going to bounce back this year and at least be in the wildcard race. And so far this year, despite some strong play from goaltender Igor Shesterkin, the Rangers find themselves in the bottom 6 of the NHL in mid-January. While already struggling, it didn't help that Adam Fox suffered his second major injury of the season, and Igor Shesterkin went down as well. And at the time of recording, they've lost 8 of their last 9 games, including an embarrassing 10-2 loss to the Boston Bruins, only to be followed up by an 8-4 loss on home ice to the Ottawa Senators. Now, when diving into the Rangers seasons, there's a multitude of reasons as to why they are struggling. Of course, like I mentioned, the injuries to Fox definitely hurt and Shesterkin. And while Mike Sullivan has significantly improved this team's defensive play, they went from 28th in the league in expected goals against per 60 last season to 9th in the NHL this season. They have regressed immensely offensively, going from 14th in the league in expected goals for per 60 last season to 31st this season, only ahead of the Seattle Kraken. I think a big reason for this is that the depth scoring has not been there. I was definitely a bit concerned about their bottom 6 going into this season with the losses of players like Chris Kreider, Kaapo Kakko, but it has been way worse than I could have imagined. They have no bottom 6 player on pace for more than 25 points. Noah Leba, a rookie, has been okay this season with 13 points, and Taylor Raddysh is the only one with more than 10 to this point. Another aspect, I think, is the leadership of JT Miller. It was a questionable decision to make him captain in the first place, and he's proved all the doubters wrong this season. Pretty much on a gamely basis, we see him failing to have any effort on back checks or engage defensively. Offensively, he has been a shell of his former self. He's constantly disinterested in the media. He just has the same answers over and over again. He just seems entirely out of it. There's definitely a high chance that he's injured and he's playing through something right now, but after the Olympics, I think he should definitely be shut down and try to get fully healthy for next season. And that gets us pretty much caught up to today's timeline. In that game against the Senators where they got blown out, we saw the fans chant "Fire Drury" consistently throughout the game in the second period. And today we saw Drury put out a statement to the fans, essentially just saying that the Rangers are going to retool, expect to see some of your favorite players on the move basically. This is the second time he's actually done this. He did this back in 2017 or 2018 after the Rangers' Henrik Lundqvist era was coming to an end and they rebuilt there. They really don't have much to show for it. They did have some playoff success in that time, but the actual prospect and development has been terrible. They ruined Capo Kakko and Alexis Lafreniere and all the other prospects, and it's led to the point where now they're an old team that's mediocre at best, and now are entering a retool once again. And while I was recording this video, basically the rumors we've been hearing have been confirmed, as Elliotte Friedman announced that the Rangers had a meeting with Artemj Panarin recently and told him that they will not be bringing him back next season. He's an expiring unrestricted free agent, so the chances of him being traded at the deadline are basically 99 to 100%. Panarin's had a decent season. He's got 16 goals and 51 points. At the age of 34, he's still an elite player offensively wise, and at the trade deadline they could definitely get some very solid assets in return. Elliotte Friedman linked him to some teams recently that include the Capitals, the Colorado Avalanche, the Florida Panthers, the Minnesota Wild, and there's been plenty of speculation on other teams looking for help in their top six. Panarin also does have a no trade clause, so he has some ability to choose where he wants to go, and unfortunately that could hinder the return the Rangers get. This upcoming draft, they have 2 first-round picks. They have their own and then the one from the Artemj Miller trade, and they don't really have much else outside of that. Now, I doubt that this is going to be a full rebuild because you have players like Igor Shesterkin who are in their 30s now and still at a pretty elite level. So I don't know if it's necessarily going to be pure draft capital that the Rangers are looking for. I think there could be some young players or current NHL players that they get in exchange for some of their assets. So who stays and who goes? For the players, I think that the Rangers are going to move on from. Artemj Panarin's an obvious one. Vincent Trocheck, it doesn't necessarily have to be this season. He still has 2 to 3 years left on a pretty cheap contract, and he's an excellent second-line center. There would be teams salivating at the chance to get a player like Trocheck. One team that comes to mind is the Minnesota Wild. I think we could try and see them acquire him at this year's deadline. And then there's some players that I'm not sure about. Mika Zibanejad, Alexis Lafreniere, and JT Miller. These are players who are still good players, and I think that you could try and trade them, put them on the block. But with those contracts and term and their age, I'm not necessarily sure if there's going to be enough interest. Maybe Alexis Lafreniere because he has that first overall pedigree and he is on the younger side. But Miller and Zibanejad, I'm not really sure if those guys actually have that much value. And of course, just the expiring UFAs over the next 1 to 2 years, I'd imagine that those are going to be players that are dealt. But now that we've talked about the players that are going to move on, who's going to stay? Who do you build around? And I think the obvious ones are Igor Shesterkin, who is 30 years old, still a franchise top 3 level goalie. And of course, Adam Fox, he's in his late 20s now, but he's still an excellent defenseman. I think Will Cooley's the perfect player for a second or third line going forward. He's a guy who actually does bring that no BS attitude, and I love his work ethic and his physicality that he has. Vlad Gavrkov's another one. He's Adam Fox's D partner. They've put up excellent results in their time together this season despite the Fox injuries. He's locked up for the next 6 seasons, so I think a top pair of those two guys is really, really solid. And then young guys like Gabe Perreault, who they drafted a couple years ago, and Scott Morrow, who they got in the Artemj Miller trade. Hopefully those are guys that they can just give opportunities to now that they're in a retool, allow them to make mistakes and develop, as opposed to forcing them into bottom 6 roles like they did with Kakko and Lafreniere. And then whoever else they draft this year, or if they move on from that and try and acquire some more win-now players. So yeah, a bit of a longer video, but I had a lot to say. Let me know down below what you guys think about the New York Rangers' current situation. Who's going to be traded? Who are they going to build around? Where do you see Artemj Panarin landing at the deadline? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.